Speaker, he is the Prime Minister now. The people out there want to know what he is going to do about the situation. He needs to spend less time whining about the last government and do his job. I thought, Mr. Speaker, that the Prime Minister and I both agreed that Israel had a right to defend herself. Yet the judge in this case noted that the family were facing a humanitarian crisis, and I quote, as a consequence of the Israeli government's indiscriminate attempts to eliminate Hamas, and government lawyers accepted this. Is the Prime Minister allowing lawyers to change the position on Israel? And was this because of advice from the Attorney General? And if not, why on earth did government lawyers accept the argument that Israeli actions were indiscriminate?
Prime Minister. They put the complete opposite argument. She talks about on top of her brief. She has no idea what she's talking about. I'll tell her again. We need to change the law. That's why the Home Secretary is already closing the gap. I know the script doesn't allow any adaptation, but this is getting tedious.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has not read the judgment. I suggest that he does. There are very serious questions now. There are very serious questions now being asked about the Attorney General, the Prime Minister's personal friend and donor. Even Labour ministers are concerned. One Labour peer, Lord Glassman, has called him the absolute archetype of an arrogant progressive fool. If we are serious about protecting our borders, we need to make sure we appoint people who believe in our country and everything we stand for. It is not clear the Attorney General does. The government is now recruiting a new Chief Inspector of Borders who lives in Finland and wants to work from home. This is not serious. Why should the British public put up with this?
The individual in question was appointed in 2019 by the last government to a senior position. He then worked for 5 years from Finland. We've changed that, and he's now going to be working from the United Kingdom full-time. Finland under them. And she talks about the Attorney General. She sat round the cabinet table with an attorney who was later sacked for breaching national security.
Tory leader Kemi Badenoch has launched a fierce attack on a recent court ruling that allows a family of Gaza refugees to enter the UK through a scheme originally designed for Ukrainians. She has called on Prime Minister Kier Starmer to prioritise Britain's national interests and curb the influence of the European Convention on Human Rights, ECHR. The ruling made by the Immigration Tribunal has ignited fresh debate over the UK's membership in the ECHR, with growing pressure on Badenoch to commit to withdrawing from the convention if the Conservatives return to power. Critics fear the decision could set a precedent, potentially opening the door for asylum seekers from any conflict zone to claim refuge in the UK. The case revolves around a family of 6, a mother, father, and their 4 children, who were displaced when their home in Gaza was destroyed during the Israel-Hamas war. The family sought entry to the UK under the Ukraine family scheme, hoping to join the father's brother, a British citizen who has lived in the UK since 2007. However, the Home Office rejected their application in May last year, arguing that they did not meet the scheme's criteria. Their initial appeal was dismissed by a first-tier immigration tribunal judge in September, but a subsequent appeal was allowed by upper tribunal judges in January on the basis of Article 8 of the ECHR, which protects the right to family life. During Prime Minister's questions, Badenoch pressed Starmer on whether the government planned to appeal the decision, calling it completely wrong. She emphasized that the Ukraine family scheme was never intended for cases like this. Starmer acknowledged the concerns, stating that he disagreed with the ruling and that the Home Office was examining legal loopholes that allowed it to happen. It should be Parliament that makes the rule. He insisted, confirming that the government intends to change the law to prevent similar cases in the future. Badenoch also used the debate to push for broader reforms to limit the influence of the ECHR, arguing that the convention has enabled foreign criminals to remain in the UK through dubious legal claims. She cited a recent case in which a man was permitted to stay in the country because his child might not like foreign chicken nuggets as much as British ones. She challenged Starmer's stance on the issue, pointing out that he had previously written a book on the ECHR and should take decisive action. "We need to put our national interests before the ECHR," she declared. Starmer reiterated his commitment to closing loopholes, but did not go as far as supporting a full withdrawal from the ECHR. Despite her criticism of the ECHR, Badenoch has so far resisted calls to leave the convention altogether. However, senior conservatives are urging her to adopt stricter migration policies to win back voters from Reform UK. Former Brexit Secretary Steve Barclay has argued that the UK cannot fully control illegal channel crossing while still bound by the Strasbourg Court's rulings. "The reality is that we have outsourced control of our borders to a foreign court, and that must end," said one senior Tory figure. "We need to leave the ECHR, scrap the Human Rights Act, and take back control of our laws and borders." With immigration remaining a hot-button issue, Badenoch faces mounting pressure to clarify her stance and take a firmer line on Britain's future relationship with the ECHR.
It was not a strong exchange. It was just about the worst exchange from Kemi Badenoch. I'm old enough to remember, I don't think you were in the House, when Ian Duncan Smith was leader of the Conservative Party in opposition. He was better at it than she is.
Right, but in terms of what the government... Hang on, but in terms...
way that people are talking about Kemi, when she is standing up at the box, I see it consistently from the Prime Minister.
She didn't listen to the answers.
"You don't know your homework, dear. You haven't done enough." And frankly,
He's never said the word dear.
It's
That's
not
a lie
far
from
off.
you. That's
It's
a
not
straightforward
far
lie
off.
from you.
It's the pat on the head.
It's not.
You know, you
But
don't
if she,
know the
if she,
details.
no. So, for instance, on Chagos, she's been offered a security briefing repeatedly by the Prime Minister. She decides to hold forth on the subject without ever taking up the security briefing. That's her entitlement as leader of the opposition.
Is the Prime Minister...
If she doesn't do her homework, she's not going to get a very good reception.
Is he being patronising, Chris?
No, it's not patronising. He's pointing out
of it by the looks at where I'm sat, and I was sat there 20 minutes ago.
He answered the question directly. He said, yes, it's the wrong decision.
And
she asked the next question.
Will you appeal it?
He
And
said
he
yes.
didn't answer that one.
Repeal? How does Parliament...
Appeal, I said.
Well,
the government
that's a matter for legal...
That is a different thing.
Let me come back, though, because that is quite a strong sort of claim that you're making, that the Prime Minister is treating the leader of the opposition in a way that is patronising by saying that she's not done her homework. But has she done her homework on this?
Anybody over the last few weeks will see that's very much an approach.
Really? What other example?
There's plenty of pointing of, "Oh, you haven't taken the briefings," or whatever. You know,
Why hasn't she taken the briefing?
To Pretty, she knows what she's talking about. She feels very often that the approach at the box is not right. I think it should be more respectful. Look, it's up to him to decide how he behaves.
Hang on,
we're not in there for an easy ride.
Right.
Hang on, Priti Patel, who was found to have bullied staff in her department by the independent advisor on ministerial advice, is complaining about attitudes at the dispatch box. The person who was found guilty
you're
of
on
bullying.
Some shaky ground about the way people talk about others, etc.
The exchange between Mims Davies, Chris Bryant, and Kier Starmer once again highlights the toxic mix of hypocrisy, double standards, and patronizing arrogance that defines the Labour Party's approach to debate, especially when faced with strong conservative women like Kemi Badenoch. Davies rightly pointed out that Starmer's attitude toward Badenoch was condescending, a classic example of the elitist, dismissive tone he often takes when confronted with opposition from those he does not expect to challenge him. This is not surprising. Time and again, Starmer has demonstrated that his supposed commitment to equality and diversity is little more than a political tool, useful only when it serves his interests, but easily discarded when faced with a formidable woman who refuses to conform to his narrative. Kemi Badenoch is one of the most intelligent and articulate politicians in Britain today. Yet, rather than engaging with her arguments, Starmer defaulted to his usual smug, dismissive manner. His response was a transparent attempt to sidestep the issue at hand, using a patronizing tone to diminish Badenoch rather than addressing her arguments directly. Mims Davies pointed out that Priti Patel, another strong conservative woman, believes Starmer's approach was wrong. Rather than taking this as a moment for self-reflection, Labour's Chris Bryant immediately jumped in with a desperate and predictable attack on Patel, dredging up the old bullying accusations against her, a tactic that reeks of political opportunism and bad faith. This is Labour's standard playbook. When they cannot win an argument, they resort to character assassination. Patel, regardless of one's opinion on her policies, was a tough and effective Home Secretary who took a firm stance on issues Labour would rather ignore. Instead of engaging with her perspectives, Bryan chose to weaponize past controversies as a way to silence her input entirely. Bryan's comment also reveals a glaring hypocrisy within Labour. The party, which claims to be a champion of workplace respect and fairness, has been riddled with internal reports of bullying and toxic behaviour, particularly under Starmer's leadership. Labour MPs have been accused of mistreating staff, intimidating party members, and fostering an environment where ideological conformity is demanded. When a Conservative MP is accused of something, Labour MPs demand resignations. When the same happens within their own party, they stay silent or dismiss it as a non-issue. Ultimately, this exchange perfectly encapsulates the modern Labour Party's approach to politics. Avoid real debate, belittle strong opponents, and resort to personal attacks when backed into a corner. It is the same tired, uninspired strategy that has left the party floundering for years. Starmer and his allies can continue their performative politics, but the British public is growing increasingly tired of the double standards, hypocrisy, and empty rhetoric. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Join our Telegram for more updates,